Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. Now, so we continue with our study of this book, Hayatuna al-Usriya Bain al-Waqi wal-Ma'mul, or our family life between the reality and that which is hoped for. This is a monthly class that we do, and we are broadcasting this lesson on this night from home due to heavy rain and flooding around the Masjid. Although the rain has stopped, I believe now, but the Masjid, Wallahu Alam. At any rate, we began discussing some mashakil, some problems that occur within the family, and the solutions to those issues and those problems. And so in this sitting, we're going to discuss the fourth problem, sabab rabi', the fourth issue, that leads to problems in the family and the solution to that problem. And that problem is taqsiru az-zawj fi nafaqa, the husband falling short as it relates to the obligatory spending upon his wife, upon his children. He does not spend upon them within his means in the obligatory manner. So he mentions Shaykh Muhammad Ghalib, Hafidhahullah, فرض الله عز وجل النفقة وجعلها واجبة على زوجي لزوجته, that Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, has made spending to be obligatory and made it to be an obligation upon the husband for his wife. فينفق مما أتاه الله على قدر غناه إن كان غنيا وإن كان فقيرا فعلى قدر حاله وما تيسر له. So therefore the husband, he must spend from that which Allah Ta'ala has made obligatory upon him in proportion to his situation. So if he is rich, he is wealthy, then he spends as a wealthy man spends upon his family. And if he is other than that, meaning he is from one whose means are somewhat straitened, his situation is not the best in terms of finances, then he spends upon his family with that which is indicative of his situation and that which Allah Ta'ala has made easy for him. As Allah Ta'ala is mentioned inside of his book, لِيُنْفِقْ ذُو سَعَةٍ مِّن سَعَتِهِ, and let the one who has an enormous amount of means, let the rich or the wealthy spend from his wealth. وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ فَلْيُنْفِقْ مِمَّا أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ, and whoever Allah has decreed that his rizq, his provisions, should be shortened or somewhat restricted, then let him spend from that which Allah has given him. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا مَا أَتَاهَا. Allah has not made any individual, any soul to be responsible except for that which He has given him. And so he says, وَقَدْ دَخَلَتْ هِنْد بِنْت عُتْبَةَ رضي الله عنها على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مرة. On one occasion, Hind, the daughter of Utbah, who was the wife of Abu Sufyan, رضي الله عنه, she entered upon the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, complaining about her husband. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, Messenger of Allah, Inna Abu Sufyan rajulun shahih. She said that Abu Sufyan, he is a man who is tight-fisted. He is tight-fisted. La yu'tini min al-nafaqa ma yakfini wa yakfi banini. And he does not give me from wealth. He does not spend upon me with that which is sufficient for myself and for my children. إِلَّا مَا أَخَذْتُ مِنْ مَالِهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمِ, except for that which I take from his wealth without his knowledge. So she would take from the wealth of her husband because the husband would not spend upon her in the obligatory manner. So therefore she would take from him that which was sufficient for herself and for her children. And so she was asking the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam regarding the ruling of this. And so he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, خُذِي مِن مَالِهِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ مَا يَكْفِيكِ وَيَكْفِي بَنِيكِ. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, take from his wealth. Take from the wealth of your husband with that which is ma'roof, yani the reasonable amount that will suffice yourself and suffice your children. Because this was her haqq, it was her right. And her husband was withholding her right from her. So therefore the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, gave her permission to only take from that which is ma'roof, meaning take within your right. Don't take beyond that. Don't seek to enrich yourself by stealing from your husband, but rather, if he is withholding your right from you, then you can take that which you have a right to take, what is sufficient for yourself and for your children. This hadith is reported by Imam al-Bukhari, and likewise Imam Muslim, and other than them from the hadith of Aisha, radiyallahu anha. And so, this statement of his, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his instruction to her to take from her husband's wealth that which is sufficient for herself and for her children, is an indication that nafiqah and spending of the husband is obligatory. He must spend upon his wife. He must spend upon his children. So therefore it is proper and befitting for him that he is not one who is tight-fisted as it relates to them, withholding while he has the means to give. He does not give them, but he has the means to give them. بل من تمام العدل أن يكون منفقا بمعروف. Rather, from the completion of one's adl and justice and his uprightness, his being one who was equitable, is that he spends upon his family with that which is reasonable, without going to excesses and being musrif, such that he is one who exceeds the set limit of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, spending upon them in that which is haram, giving them those things that are impermissible for them to have, and the likes of this, without going to excess. Nam wa anti khatiri minhu, and likewise he does so with an open heart. He doesn't give to them begrudgingly, being upset that he had to give. Rather, he spends upon them happily, because in reality, the man spending upon his wife, spending upon his children, is in reality spending upon himself. When he takes care of them, he's actually taking care of himself, as has been mentioned by Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen. He said, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, إنك لن تنفق نفقة تبتغي بها وجه الله إلا أجرت عليها. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, that you do not spend anything seeking by way of that the face of Allah, except that you're going to be rewarded for what you have spent. حتى ما تجعله في امرأتك تؤجر على ذلك. Even a morsel of food that you put into the mouth of your wife, you're going to be rewarded for that. So that which you feed your family with, you feed your wife, you feed your children, have an intention for that, because you're going to be rewarded in proportion to your action. وما جاء من حديث حكيم ibn Muawiyah al-Qushayri, who reported from his father, radiallahu anhu, that he said, قلت يا رسول الله ما حق زوجتي أحدنا عليه. O Messenger of Allah, what is the right of our wives upon us? What is the right of our wives upon us? He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أن تطعمها إذا طعمت. He said that you should feed her when you feed yourself. You don't eat and you watch your wife starve. You don't eat and you watch her go hungry. No. And likewise, أن تكسوها إذا اكتسيت, as well that you clothe her when you clothe yourself. It doesn't mean that every time you buy yourself a garment, you have to buy her a garment, but rather, you don't clothe yourself while you see her having upon herself tattered and torn clothing and the likes of this. While you have the best of shoes and the best of garments, you watch your wife walking around with garments that are shabby and disheveled. Rather, you clothe her when you clothe yourself. وَلَا تَضْرِبَ الْوَجْهِ, and that you do not strike her upon her face. You don't beat her. وَلَا تُقَبِّحْ, and likewise that you don't ridicule and mock her. وَلَا تَحْجُرَ إِلَّا فِي الْبَيْتِ, and that you do not boycott her except inside of the home. Meaning you do not let the problems of the household leak outside of the household such that it becomes apparent to others that you're having problems in your household. And that you are boycotting your wife. Rather, keep these things and keep these affairs inside the home. فَالْإِنْفَاقُ مِنْ حُقُوقِ الزَّوْجَةِ سَوَاءً كَانَتْ غَنِيَّةً أَوْ فَقِيرًا. So therefore, he mentions that al-infaq, and one spending upon his wife, is from the rights of her. It is from the rights that she has upon her husband, whether she is rich or whether she is poor. Meaning that just because the wife has money, it does not mean that the husband is not obliged to spend upon her. Because some of the men, perhaps, they look and they say, well, you don't really need my money because you have money. You don't really need me to spend upon you because you have a job and you make more money than I do. La. Rather, the Shaykh, he says, whether she is rich or whether she is poor, it is still from her rights. It is still from her rights. Whether she is muwallafa, whether she is employed, whether she has a job or she does not have a job, it is still obligatory upon the husband to spend upon her, to see after her needs, to take after her affairs. He says, and there's come a fatwa from a Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen regarding this issue, when he was asked about this, and he said, alayhi rahmatullah, and pay attention to this fatwa because he brings some tremendous details as it relates to this issue. He said that it is obligatory upon a person to spend upon his family. The person must spend upon his family, upon his wife, and upon his children, bil ma'ruf, with that which is reasonable. He spends upon them with that which is reasonable. Hatta law kanat zawja ghaniya, even if his wife has wealth. Even if his wife is wealthy, she has her own money, it does not remove the obligation of the man to spend upon his family. He says, فَإِنَّهُ يَجِبْ عَلَى زَوْجٍ أَنْ يُنْفِقْ, the husband must spend. And from that, مَا إِذَا كَانَتْ زَوْجَ تُدَرِّسْ أَيْ مُعَلِّمَةً أَوْ مُوَظَّفَةً. He says, and an example of that is that if the wife is a teacher, for example, she teaches, meaning she's employed, she has a job. وَقَدْ شُرِطَ عَلَى زَوْجٍ تَمْكِينُهَا مِنْ تَدْرِيسِهَا. And she, in order to get married, she made it a condition. She made a condition in the marital contract that the husband, in order to marry her, allows her to continue teaching. It's a condition that they got married upon. Now, he says, and the husband agreed upon that. فإنه لا حق له فيما تأخذه من راتب ولا نصفه ولا أكثر ولا أقل. Then the husband has no right to any of her money that she earns from teaching. He has no right to any of her money that she earns from teaching. He cannot take half of her salary. He cannot take more than that, nor less than it. الراتب لها ما دام قد شرط عليه عند العقد. The money that she makes, her salary that she earns from her employment, it belongs to her. It is her money. As long as she made it a condition at the time of the marital contract that he is not to prevent her from teaching, and the husband was pleased with that, then he has no right whatsoever to prevent her and say, no, I want you to stay home now. After he gets her home and they got married with that condition at the beginning of the marital contract, he cannot renege upon that contract and say, okay, I don't want you working anymore. Because he already agreed to that at the time of marriage. وَلَيْسَ لَهُ الْحَقِّ أَنْ يَأْخُذْ مِنْ مَكَافَتِهَا. Nor does he have a right to take any of her wages. Now, all of that belongs to her. Her money is her money. Now, she's working and they agreed upon that. At the time of the marital contract, her money is her money. As for if this was not stipulated at the beginning of the marriage, if it was not stipulated at the beginning of a marriage that he is to allow her to keep working and so on and so forth, نعم ثم لما تزوج قال, and then they got married and she's working. He says, لا تدرسي, I don't want you teaching anymore. I don't want you working anymore. Then in this case, they can discuss the issue and they can come to terms of agreement, and whatever they agree upon is between them. Now, if he says that she has to stop working, then she has to stop working because she did not stipulate that at the beginning of the marital contract. Or if he says, for example, that you can continue working with the condition that you give me half of your wages. Now, you give me half of your wages. Or you give me 1/3 of your wages. Then he can say that. He can say that. Now, or you give me 3/4. Or you give me 1/4. Or whatever resembles this. Whatever they agree upon is between them. This is between them. Now, or he can say, okay, you can just work and I don't want nothing. But it would be his right. It would be within his right, just as it would be within her right if she would have stipulated at the beginning of the marital contract that I want to marry you, but on a condition that you'll not stop me from working or teaching or what have you. And he is in agreement with that stipulation and that condition. Then in that case, she can continue working. He cannot come back and say, no, stop working now. He can discuss it with her and now they try to come to some agreement. But he got married to her upon the condition that she had stated. He was in agreement with that. He cannot take any of her money. Now, you see how this works in the woman's favor. But now, if she did not state that as a condition in order to get married, and then the husband comes back later and says, I want you to stop working, or you can continue working, but with this condition, then they can come to terms of agreement between themselves, something that is pleasing to both of them and fair and just. Because the husband has a right over his wife at this point. He has a right over his wife. Perhaps he wants her to attend to some need of his, but she's busy working. Now, perhaps he wants her, but she says, okay, I gotta work today, so I can't give you your rights. Now, the husband has a right upon her. So he says that, that if she mentioned at the time of the marital contract that she wants to continue working, and the husband agreed to that, then he has no right whatsoever to prevent her, nor can he take any of her wages that she makes. It's the end of the fatwa from Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, and these words can be found in his explanation to Riyadh al-Salihin, volume 6, page 143, in the explanation of hadith number 1535. For Suratul Masala, so the example which the Shaykh has brought is that the wife, now when she accepts the marriage proposal from the husband, as she makes a condition at the beginning of the marital contract that he is not to take from her anything from her wealth, and that she is to continue working in the likes of this, then that condition becomes binding upon the husband to fulfill, and still he must spend upon her, upon her. So you see clearly she has her own wealth from work. This does not remove the husband's obligation of spending upon his wife, unless the wife, she agrees to forego something from her right, or she agrees to make the affair lighter upon her husband, then she can do that. Similarly, from the manifestations of the obligatory spending from the husband towards his wife is the dowry. The dowry at the time of marriage. And the legislation has come and indicated the importance of this matter, and how the husband, he must give the woman her dowry in full. It is binding upon him. As Allah Ta'ala has said, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدَقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً, and give the women their dowries nihla, as a bridal gift at the beginning of marriage, indicating the husband's sincerity. Similarly, it has come from Anas radiallahu anhu that he mentioned that Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, may Allah be pleased with him, came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam having a yellow marker upon his face. He had a yellow mark upon his face, as was the custom of some of the Ansar, that when the man got married, then they would paint with a yellow line upon the face of the man who had gotten married. And so the Messenger of Allah asked him about that. He said that he had gotten married to a woman amongst the Ansar. فَقَالَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, so he said, كَمْ سُقْتَ لَهَا. Look, he asked him, how much did you give her? How much did you give her? It's an indication that what? The dowry is binding upon the husband. It is obligatory. Now, so he said, Zinatu nawahin or nawatin min dhahab. I gave her a small amount of gold. I gave her a small amount of gold as a dowry. So he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Awlam walaw bishat. He said, then do a walima. He said, do a walima, even if it is only by way of one sheep. Even if you slaughter one sheep and you cook that up and distribute it amongst the people and feed the people, do a walima, even if it's a small walima. Now, so him asking, alayhi salatu wasalam, regarding the dowry is an indication of its importance, because it is a right from the rights the wife has upon her husband. Some of the people of knowledge have mentioned that if the husband does not give the wife her dowry, if he withholds her dowry, then the woman, she can withhold from him. Meaning she can withhold some of his rights. She can withhold intimacy from him. And some of them have mentioned as well, such as Shaykh Abdulaziz ibn Baz, that if he does not give her dowry in the stipulated time, because it is permissible to defer the dowry and say, okay, I want such and such, but you have 6 months to give it. You have a month to give it, and the likes of this. It is permissible to do. Do we advise with it? Allahu Alam. It depends upon the individual, and it depends upon the situation. But one thing for sure is that most men are not willing to defer their rights. They're not willing to defer their rights. If you ask them, for example, okay, I'll let you defer the dowry on the condition that you let me defer obedience to you. You let me defer intimacy with you. And the likes of this. Most men, they don't necessarily want to, and they're not willing to give up their rights. Nah. Allahu Alam. But it is permissible. It is permissible to defer the dowry, as it is the right of the wife, and if she chooses to defer, she can defer it. But if the husband does not pay it within the stipulated time frame, then, as Sheikh bin Baz, he mentions that she can leave the marital home, or she can refuse to travel with him, and the likes of this, until she takes from him her dowry. It's been mentioned by Ibn Munzir that he said, أجمع كل من نحفظ من أهل العلم. He says it has been mentioned, there's a consensus rather from all of those whom we have narrated from the people of knowledge, that the woman, she can withhold from intimacy with the husband until he gives her dowry. It's an important affair. He says, rather, the legislation has guaranteed for the woman that she has a dowry coming to her, even if her husband dies before being intimate with her. So if the husband passes away, she gets married to him, and he dies before being intimate with her, she still has a right to a dowry from his wealth. It can be taken from the wealth that he left behind. Now, just as she has a right to a portion of her of inheritance and the likes. Now, and this has come from Al-Qama, in that which he reported from Ibn Mas'ud, that he was asked about a man who marries a woman and he has not given her anything. I mean, he has not given her her dowry, nor has he been intimate with her, and then he dies. Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu said, "Laha mithlu sadaqi nisa'iha," that she has a right to a dowry the likes of women similar to her. Wala, he said, la waqsa wala shatab, yani without increase upon that and without decrease, meaning no more, no less. No more, no less. She can receive a dowry similar to those women who are similar to her. Yani women in her locale, women from her tribe, women her age range, so on and so forth. Those women that are similar to her, the dowries that they receive, she has a right to that, to be taken from the wealth of her deceased husband. Now, وَعَلَيْهَا الْعِدَّةِ, and she likewise has to wait the iddah. She has to wait the iddah before she can marry again. وَلَهَا الْمِرَاثِ, and she likewise has a right to inheritance. So the family of this deceased man cannot come along and say, well, he just married you a couple of days ago, so we're going to take all the wealth, and he didn't really know you like that anyway, and so on and so forth. Rather, she has a right to inheritance. She has a right to her dowry in full, without increase or decrease. And she has to observe an iddah before she can be married, because she is a wife. She is a wife. Naam, so a man, upon hearing Ibn Mas'ud say this, said, قَضَى رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ في بروع بنت واشق امرأة منا مثل ما قضيت. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam issued a judgment regarding Barwa, the daughter of Washiq, a woman from amongst our tribe, with a fatwa or a verdict that is similar to that which you have said, O Ibn Mas'ud. And upon hearing this, Ibn Mas'ud, he rejoiced. He was happy because his fatwa coincided with the fatwa of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. The Shaykh continues that it is upon the husband to give his wife her dowry with that which is reasonable and from the kindness of his own self. Yani that which he should not be upset about it. He should not be mad that he had to give the dowry and so on and so forth, constantly bringing it up, throwing it in her face, that your dowry was this, your dowry was that, and I paid this to marry you, and so on and so forth. Now, rather, he gives her her dowry with an open chest. إِلَّا مَا اتَّفَقَ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ مُؤَخَّرٍ. Yani he mentions that which we mentioned and alluded to earlier, that it is permissible to defer the dowry. Yani perhaps the woman says something like, I would like Umrah. I would like you to take me on Umrah. But she doesn't have a passport. He doesn't have a passport. The likes of this. He agrees to that. And this is a deferred dowry because they have to take some steps in order to make this happen, right? She says, I want Hajj, and the likes of this. But it's not Hajj season. So this is a deferred dowry. They have to take some steps in order for this to happen. Or some other agreement which they may make. That is the right of the woman. She can choose to do that. Likewise, it is not permissible for the husband, nor for the father, nor for anyone else to take anything from the wealth of that woman. If she is given a dowry that is a financial amount, a dollar amount, then the husband cannot come back and say, hey, you remember that dowry I gave you? Let me get 100 out of it. Let me get 200 out of it, and the likes of this. Nor can her father come along and say, the dowry which your husband gave you, let me get 50, let me get 25, let me get half, and so on and so forth. Now, he says, nor is it suitable for that what some of the husbands do, from being mean towards their wives in order to take some of the dowry back. The Shaykh, he mentions 2 points of benefit, and these are 2 important points of benefit, and we're going to conclude with this, inshallah ta'ala. The first point of benefit, he says, is the tanbih. The first tanbih is as it relates to the affair of an-nafaqa, the spending of the husband. He says that it is not considered to be generosity and goodness that the husband gives the wife every single thing that she wants. He gives her anything that she requests and asks for. This is not considered to be from generosity, to the point that he puts himself under financial strain and he puts himself in the hole trying to please his wife and giving her everything that her heart desires, everything that she looks at, everything that she asks for. Now, وَلَا يَكُنْ حَالَهُمَا كَمَا يُقَالُ, and the affair is not, it is not to be as is said, كُلْ مَا اشْتَهَيْتَ اشْتَرَيْتُ, and everything that you want, I will buy. La. It should not be like this. He says, كَمَا أَنَّ مِنَ وَاجِبْ عَلَى زَوْجَةٍ, likewise, it is obligatory upon the wife to be diligent upon not overburdening her husband. She should not overburden him with requests, constantly asking for things that may be beyond his means, and the likes of this, demanding that he get it for her in order to make her happy. فَلَيْسَ هَذَا مِنْ حُسْنِ الْعُشْرَةِ, this is not from good association and good dealings from the wife. وَلَا مِنْ جَمِيلَ تَوَدُّدْ, nor is it from love and display of affection from the husband, that he simply gives her everything that she asks for. But هَذَا مِمَّا يُؤَدِّي إِلَى التَّنْفِيرِ, rather, this is from something which will lead to perhaps the husband running away from her. Or he may run away from her. Because he asks for too much. He asks for things that he cannot afford. He puts himself into the hole, not wanting to disappoint her. And the likes of this. لَا سِيَّمَا إِنْ كَثُرَتْ الطَّلَبَاتِ, especially if the requests are abundant. The requests are abundant. Now, and she constantly demands things while the husband, he has somewhat of a tightened and restricted means. فَلَا شَكَّ أَنَّ هَذَا مِمَّا يُؤَدِّي إِلَى الْمَشَاكِلِ الْكَثِيرَةِ بَيْنَهُمَا, without doubt, this is from that which can lead to much problems between the spouses. This is the first point. And the second point of benefit is that from the important affairs that must be comprehended and understood is al-ibti'ad wal-hadar min qadiyat al-qiyas al-ghayr, is that one must stay far removed, one must stay far away from al-qiyas al-ghayr, looking at other people's situations and comparing your situation to theirs. Now, what do we mean? That so-and-so has this, so-and-so's husband gives her that, or so-and-so's wife does this for him and does that for him. One must avoid looking at other people's situation, comparing it to your own. Whether that is in a marriage between one man and one wife, or it is a polygynous marriage in which there are multiple wives, looking at the other wife and her situation and what she has and what goes on in the other house and the likes of this, one must avoid this. Now, one must avoid this. He says, فَلَا يَكُنْ نَظْرَ الْإِنسَانِ عَلَى مَا عِنْدَ غَيْرِهِ, so one should not look at what others have. Rather, he says, فَيَجِبْ إِدْرَاكَ أَنْ كُلْ بَيْتٍ لَهُ نَفَقَاتُهُ, one must look, one must know and comprehend and understand that every house has a nafaqah that is appropriate for it. One situation is not the same as another situation. One household, their affair is not like the other household. Now, every situation, every household has its own situation. وَلَهُ حَالَهُ وَوَضْعُهُ الْخَاص بِهِ, and each household has its hal, it has its conditions, and it has the things that are specific to that household. وَمَا قَدْ يَتَيَسَّرْ لِزَوْجَ أَحَدُهُمْ لَا يَشْتَرِطُ أَنْ يَتَيَسَّرَ لِلْأُخْرَى, and so those affairs that are facilitated for one wife, it is not a condition that it has to be similarly facilitated for the other wife. Her situation is different. Her situation is different. So therefore, the wife should avoid comparing herself to her sisters or to her neighbors to her friends, and so on and so forth, and requesting from her husband, rather demanding from him that he give him or he give to her that which so-and-so's husband gives to her, or that he give to her that which he has given to the other wife, and the likes of this. بل عليها أن تشكر زوجها على كل ما يقدمه لها مما رزقه الله سبحانه وتعالى. Rather, it is incumbent upon the wife to be grateful to her husband for that which he gives to her from that which Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has provided him with. And she should not, or rather the husband should not be tight-fisted and stingy towards his wife. وَهَذَا أَمْرٌ مُهِمٌ. This is an important affair. It is an important affair that it is an important affair to keep the relations and the dealings good between the spouses. The Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, he said, رَأَيْتُكُنَّ أَكْطَرَ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. I have seen you, meaning the women, to be the majority of the inhabitants of the fire. And when he was asked about this, meaning, Bima ya Rasulullah, what was it that caused the women to be the majority of the inhabitants of the fire? He said, Kathratul La'n, an abundance of La'n and cursing and sending the curses upon whatever may anger them and displease them. They send curses upon their spouse, and curses upon the children, and curses upon the car when the car breaks down, and curses upon the animals and the pets, and curses upon this one and that one. This is something which will cause the people to be from the majority of the inhabitants of the fire. And likewise, kufr, their ingratitude towards their husband. And he explained this ingratitude. He said that one of you can be excellent towards one of them, can treat her well the entirety of the time that he's with her, and then when she sees anything from him that he dislikes, she will say, مَا رَأَيْتُ مِنْكَ خَيْرًا قَطْ. I've never seen anything good from you. All the good that he has done goes out the window. And it is even worse when a man displays this characteristic towards his wife, because perhaps the men, they are like this as well. The woman, she's a good woman. She treats him well, looks after his needs. As soon as he sees one thing that may displease him, then he says similar. All of her good goes out the window. He forgets about everything. I've never seen anything good from you. All you do is this. All you do is that. You should avoid speaking in absolutes. Avoid speaking in absolutes. This is a bad habit that many couples have. What do we mean by speaking in absolutes? Using these two words. You always or you never. You always or you never. Avoid saying the likes of these things to your spouse. You always do this. No, it's not true that he always does that. Or you never do this. It's not true that he never does that. So avoid speaking like this to your spouse, men and the women. Avoid speaking in absolutes. So it's even worse when a man displays this characteristic, because the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam described the women with it. Nah, but the men do it as well. He likewise mentioned in a hadith that the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam said, لا ينظر الله إلى امرأة لا تشكر زوجها وهي لا تستغني عنه. That Allah will not look at a woman, meaning the look of rahmah, the look of mercy. He will not look at a woman who does not display gratitude towards her husband, وهي لا تستغني عنه, knowing full well that she can't do without him. She knows and understands full well that her life will be difficult if she didn't have that man in her life. It was just her and her children on her own. And she had to do everything by herself. Her life will be difficult. And she knows this. Yet, she does not display gratitude to her husband for good that he does. Allah will not look at this woman. فَهِيَ دَائِمًا فِي حَاجَةٍ إِلَيْهِ وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ لَا تَشْكُرُهُ. So the Shaykh, he says that she is perpetually in need of her husband, but in spite of this, she is not grateful to him. فَلَا شَكَّ أَنَّ هَذَا مِنْ أَسْبَابِ سُوءِ الْعُشْرَةِ. Without doubt, this is from the means towards bad companionship and bad association and dealings, which will lead to separation and lead to dysfunction in the household. This is that advice which the Shaykh has given, and we likewise advise with it to display gratitude from Tarafain, from both angles, from the husband towards the wife. He should display gratitude towards her for good that she displays towards him. And likewise, she should be grateful to her husband for the good that he displays towards her. Because the absence of this matter, not displaying gratitude, is from those affairs that lead to separation. They lead to feelings of alienation. They lead to problems and schism within the household. So this is the fourth mushkila, the fourth problem, along with its solution. And we will suffice with this, inshallah ta'ala, and pick up next month from the fifth problem, which is tasarruf al-azwaj fi mas'ali at-ta'addud, is a poor manner of operation from both the spouses as it relates to the affair of ta'addud, or polygyny. And Allah knows best. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.